What's going on, everybody? Here we are on a Wednesday, and we got some great questions again. This week we have, again, 6 questions. 2 of them are very similar, crossover a lot of topic, so I decided to combine those into one. One of these was emailed to me, but the others were sent just by putting your comment below. Just like I always recommend, if you have a question that you want me to cover for a week, then down in the comments below, simply type your question. I always look forward to hearing what everybody's interested in. I genuinely enjoy talking about cards, as I think that everybody knows by now. So when you leave a comment, it's just a conversation starter to talk about an issue. And if you're thinking about it and you're curious about it, most likely somebody else is as well. So I do want to throw one thing out. On Friday, in just a couple of days, I'm going to go ahead and post my pickups for the month of February. And in that video, I will talk about how to submit your pickup from February that you want to be included in the Midlife Community Show and Tell video. So look for that on Wednesday. I'll have a link to the place to submit your card pickup from February in Friday's video when I do my pickups for the month of February. Let's look at our first question right now.
I like collecting graded cards and have several raw cards in my collection that I would like to get graded. However, like you, I have a monthly budget and can't justify spending my budget on grading cards that I already own instead of buying new cards for my collection. Put another way, I find the opportunity cost of grading to be too high. I believe you submit cards for your collection as well as cards that you want to sell for grading from time to time. How do you justify spending money from your budget on grading your personal collection cards?
Super fair question. I've heard a lot of people talk about one of the reasons that they don't want to grade. And some people say the reason they don't want to cross over from one company to another is they would rather spend their money buying more cards. I mean, if the hobby is about buying cards, why would anybody want to spend money to get cards that they already have encapsulated and graded by a third party? So there's a couple of different ways that I think that we could look at this particular situation. First way that I think that you could look at it is you're not just getting a card graded. You're also getting a card authenticated. And you're also getting a card protected. So when you get a card and you submit it in to a grading company, whether it's PSA or SGC or whoever it is, it's not just to get it graded. So you're spending some money. So you send a card into SGC. Right now it's $15, right? $15 includes getting it in a case and protected. And it gets it authenticated. And it gets it graded. So I don't think that we should, necessarily just look at the process of getting a card graded as getting it graded. There's more that we get out of it. If you pick a company that you like the looks of their case, which is probably why you picked the company, then you could even make the argument, like for example, if you send it into SGC, you could make the argument that it enhances the look of the card to have it in that holder. Some people would say it detracts. That's fine. But depending on what you choose, it could add to it. Now, here's the other way to look at it, and here's another thing to consider. When a card is graded, it usually adds value to the card. It adds value to the card because there's more demand for the card, because more people are willing to buy a card that's been graded because they know what they're getting. So if you took a raw card, right, and you got it graded like you're talking about for $15, you're potentially adding a lot more than $15 in value to the card. So if you were to, at your house, okay, if you were to say paint the living room, and by painting the living room with a new coat of paint, it cost you, we'll just say $1,000, but it added $5,000 in value, that might be worth doing. because you have a net gain of $4,000, right? Cost you $1,000 to do it, you add $5,000 in value. You know, there are some home improvements, for example, that increase the value of the home more than they cost. Front yard landscaping, right? So you get the front yard landscape, maybe it costs you $25,000 and it makes the house worth $50,000 more. So if a card, you spend $15 to get it graded and it makes it worth potentially $100 more, that might be a reason to do it. Some people would say, no, I still want to take all my money and spend it on cards. That's understandable. I mean, if you were to say, I don't want to do this, I don't want to get cards graded, I'm just going to leave them raw so I could buy more cards with my money, that is a very reasonable decision. I can't argue with that decision. I don't think anybody would say you're doing anything wrong. So if you decided to leave them raw, totally understandable. Now, here's, the other piece of it. A lot of people buy cards graded, and some of us buy cards raw, and some of us buy both, right? If you need a justification to yourself for why you should get a card graded, my guess is that by buying it raw, you got a deal on it. You got it for less than it would have been graded. So maybe just look at it as part of the purchase. I'll give you an example. You buy a card for $100, right? And you add $15 in it for grading. So now you're in that card $115. Would you buy that card? If you didn't have the card raw, would you buy it for $115 total, right? The $100 for the card and the $15 to get it graded. If the answer is yes, that's a good deal, then look at it as part of the original purchase. It just hadn't been graded yet. If you would have bought that card for $150, but you bought it for $100 raw and you're spending $15 to get it graded, you bought a $150 card for $115. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I have a lot of cards personally that I've never had graded, and I probably never will have graded because it's just not, I'm not selling them. I don't need them to be authenticated. I don't care what the grade is. So a fair amount of my collection is not graded. And so I totally understand, yeah, let's not spend money on getting a card graded. Let's spend money on getting more cards. That's a fine option. But you can definitely, in your mind, justify the cost of getting something graded because you're A, adding value to it, potentially, usually adding value to it. B, you're getting the card authenticated and protected, and sometimes it enhances the look. And C, if you hadn't already bought the card raw and you wanted to buy it graded, you would have paid the price of what you paid raw plus the grading fee. So it still is a purchase that you would have made. Either way, I don't think you can go wrong, but if you need some justification for why you might spend money to do it, that might help. Or maybe it doesn't, or maybe it's confusing, or maybe I didn't make any sense, but that's how my mind works when I send a card in for grading that I'm gonna keep. But I'll be honest, most of the time, 80% of the time at least, that I take a raw card and I grade it, it's because I'm planning on selling it. And so I'm planning on selling it, and getting it graded makes it easier to sell, it makes it more liquid, and it also usually adds value to it more than the cost of the grading. So I grade it because I get an added benefit financially from getting it graded before I sell it. Occasionally, I'll get a card graded that I'm gonna keep. But honestly, generally speaking, if there's a card that I buy that I'm gonna keep, it's already graded. So almost always, for me at least, when I get a raw card graded, is because it's getting ready to be sold.
What is your opinion of the eBay authenticity guarantees? Does it give comfort? Because I've bought a few raw Mickey Mantles that were authenticated by eBay, but PSA kicked back because, in their opinion, it was questionable authenticity. What would you do in this case?
So the eBay authentication program Now, what's my take on that? Interesting question. I personally, I, I don't. It doesn't add value for me. So as soon as I get a card back from, I purchase it and they send it off for eBay authentication and then they send it to me, I immediately take it out of the eBay authentication wrapper. I don't leave it in there for very long. The first couple of times that I got cards that were eBay authenticated, I left them in there for a minute because I wasn't sure if it was going to add value or decrease value or anything like that. So I left them. Now, literally, as soon as the card comes out of the box, it comes out of the wrapper. I don't personally value it. I pretty much never buy cards that are ungraded cards that meet the threshold to be eBay authenticated. I don't do that. I buy cards that are already graded that are worth enough or expensive enough that they qualify for the eBay authentication. So because of that, it doesn't apply to me a ton. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because I don't have a ton of experience with what you're referring to, but I totally understand the situation. Now, my understanding is, according to what I've read and what I've heard and, things, is that the eBay authentication program uses two companies. It uses CGC and it uses PSA. Those are the two companies that do the authentication of the cards. So super interesting that you would have a card that was eBay authenticated, which was either done by CGC or PSA, and then you send it to PSA and it gets rejected. I would be curious to know, was the card still in the eBay authentication when you sent it in for grading? Because that would be interesting. Now, the whole point of an authentication and a guarantee is the follow through. At the end, did they actually guarantee it? Did they actually stand by the authentication that they are providing for you? So what would I do? What I would do is I would go to eBay and I would say, I bought this card. You guys authenticated it. And now the actual authority is saying that it's not authentic. So I would like my money back. That's what I would do. Does that mean that's what you should do? Not necessarily. Again, I'm just a guy with opinions. It doesn't mean that my opinions are right. But the whole point of the authentication guarantee is to prevent you from getting an unauthentic card. So if it was authenticated and now it's not getting authenticated by potentially the same company, then there's a problem there. And I would certainly contact eBay, and I would probably put those resources into a different card. And I would move on from that card and assume that eBay is going to actually follow through with their guarantee. Very interesting that not only this happened, but it sounds like it happened a couple of times. What is the point of an eBay authentication if the card's not authentic? Personally, again, when I go to buy a card on eBay and it says eBay authentication guarantee included, I'm like, oh, that means it's going to be an extra 5 days before I get my card. That's what goes through my mind. I've had cards show up at my house and I've looked at them and I said, this isn't authentic. And I put in a request to do a return, and I returned the cards. And they said, why do you want to return the cards? I said, because it's not authentic. Not because it went through the eBay authentication, but because I could tell they weren't authentic cards. That's happened, I think, twice. So personally, I don't put a lot of weight in the eBay authentication guarantee. It sounds like if things are getting through there and then not getting graded, then it sounds like maybe we all should be more aware of that. But I would definitely contact eBay if it was me and my card.
Notwithstanding value, if you had a choice to have a 1951 Bowman Mantle card or a 1952 Topps Mantle card, which one would you choose and what would be your reasons?
Okay, great question. The 51 Bowman Mantle or the 52 Topps Mantle, price notwithstanding. So, I've put out a lot of videos. I do about 4 videos on average a week. Some weeks it's 3, some weeks it's 5. Average is probably 4. And I've been doing this for, about 15 or 16 months now. And during those 16 months or so, I guess that would mean that I'm putting out, I don't know, somewhere, I've put out maybe 250 videos. Out of all the videos I've put out, some of the most negative feedback I got was on the video that I said, hey, or asked, I didn't even say, I asked, do you think that rookie cards are overrated? And I had some people say some not so nice things about me suggesting that maybe that they're overrated. Now, I'm not saying, and I never did say, that a second year card is better than the rookie card. I never said that. I think most of us, not in every case, but in most cases, most of us would want the rookie card because the rookie card is the first card. In collecting, we like firsts of things. And the first card, the rookie card, is sort of the most sought after card. That's why it sells for the most. Even when there are times that the rookie card is not the best looking card, right? Nobody can tell me that a 64 Pete Rose is not better looking than a 63 Pete Rose. Yet the 63 Pete Rose sells for way more only because it's his rookie card, not because it's a better card, right? So if that's the case, then we clearly as a group prefer rookie cards. Not surprising. Not saying anything earth-shattering, Greg. I'm just simply clarifying my comments that I made before. I don't know if a rookie card should be worth 10 times the amount of the second year card. I love the 54 Hank Aaron rookie card. I personally also love the 55 Hank Aaron. Should the rookie card be worth 10 times the second year card? That was the point of my video. I don't know if it should be worth 10 times. It should be worth more, but it should be worth 10 times more. That's my issue. So to your question, right? Okay, Greg, you're rambling. You're just talking about things. What would I rather have in this case, the 51 Bowman Mantle or the 52 Topps Mantle? Now, the 52 Topps Mantle, I think, is a better looking card. I think both cards are beautiful. I think some people don't like the 51 Bowman. I love the 51 Bowman. I also love the 52 Topps. I love them both. I do, however, think the 52 Topps is better looking than the 51 Bowman. So if I'm going from an eye appeal standpoint, I would lean toward the 52 Topps. But then, Greg, you just said that you'd rather have rookie cards than second year cards because the 52 Topps isn't the rookie card. It is the second card. So if it's the second card, would I rather have the second card than the first? Well, you said price notwithstanding. Now, a lot of the times we'd rather have the rookie card, not just because it's the rookie card, because it's worth more. But in this case, the 52 Topps is actually worth more. But again, price we're throwing out the window for the question. The most iconic card in all of sports cards is the 52 Topps Mantle. It is the most iconic card. It is the wow factor. It's when you go to a card show and you see a 52 Topps Mantle, you want to look at it. You want to see it. More so than any card. Now, some people might say the Honus Wagner because they've never seen the Honus Wagner. I personally have seen 5 or 6 different Honus Wagners, so that would be cool too. But the 52 Topps is the recognizable iconic card. So the question then becomes, would I rather have the 51 Bowman rookie card of Mantle or the most iconic card in all of sports cards, which also happens to, in my opinion, be better looking than the rookie card? Personally, I think I'm going with the 52 Topps. Now, at the prices that they sell for, the price of the 52 Topps sells for like double the 51 Bowman. At the current prices, if I were to buy one, I would buy the 51 Bowman because the difference between the 52 Tops and the 51 Bowman, it's a tough decision. This is a tough question. So if I were to buy one and spend money on it, I'd rather buy the one, if it's pretty much a tie, I'd probably buy the one that's actually his rookie card that's half as expensive as the other. But if the prices are thrown out, two are sitting on the table in front of me, prices are forever off the table, I'm going to take the iconic card, which is, I think, the better looking card, which is the 52 Tops.
Hi, Greg. Just started buying the Fleer 1961 NBA set. I found a card that is BVG7, and I checked the serial number on their registry, and it isn't popping up. Does this mean it's not legit or BVG card? Or is it that it's just old and isn't on the registry anymore? I responded, wow, that's interesting. I'd contact Beckett and ask what's up. His response included, the card looks really nice, and especially with the Beckett slab. What's the best advice you can give to someone like me that's just getting into the vintage cards? I'm starting a long-term project of completing the 1961 Fleer NBA set.
All right, so in this particular question, there was an original question, which I tried to shortly answer in the middle. I want to talk about that first before talking about the second question. The original question was, I bought this card. It's a nice looking card. It's in a BVG holder. I looked it up. It's not showing up in the cert. First thing I would do personally is I would contact Beckett and see what's going on with the card. Is it a fake holder? That's an option. That's a possibility. Was it decertified? That's a possibility. Is it not in their database? That seems unlikely. It's certainly possible, which is why I would be reaching out to them. That would concern me. I hope it wasn't a crazy expensive card. And if it was a crazy expensive card, I hope that we know who the seller is. But something's certainly off. Have I seen cards on in PSA holders that the cert didn't show up? Yes, I've seen that. Most cases, it's because for whatever reason, the card was decertified. Generally speaking, why is a card then decertified? Well, cards are decertified when, after they had been graded and returned, PSA realizes that the card, or the grading company, whoever it is, realizes that the card is a fake based on whatever new technologies they have. Now, it sounds like you obviously didn't send it to Beckett, and so most of the companies have a guarantee that if it's in their holder, they will refund you as long as you're not the person who issued it to Beckett or to PSA. That's PSA's policy, is they will refund you what you paid for the card in their holder if you aren't the person who submitted it to PSA. Now, I don't know what Beckett's policy is. I'm guessing it's probably something similar. As far as that goes, definitely I'm contacting Beckett first to find out what's going on with this cert. I saw an interview, I don't know, maybe 2-3 months ago with Nat Turner, and he said they are actively looking for cards that they've decertified. They're actively trying to hunt them down so that they can reacquire them to get them out of the market. I would assume Beckett would be in the same situation, and if there is a card that they've decertified, they'd be trying to get it back. The second part of your question, or the second question asking, what advice would I give to somebody who's getting into vintage? My advice would be, what would be my main advice? That's a brutal question. I mean, I could do 5 episodes on what my main advice would be to somebody getting into vintage. I would say start slow and only buy what you know. Don't go out and start buying cards that are outside of what you're familiar with. Figure out what you're going to first focus on and get familiar with it so you know it. What are the pros and cons of, let's just say, the 55 and 56 top sets? What are the key cards? What are the condition issues? What are the first and last cards that might be more prone to condition issues? What are the positives of buying certain cards and certain players, and what does the trend look like and the history look like of certain cards in those sets? I would start very narrow, is my advice. I would start narrow, and I would also start a little bit on the cheaper, less expensive end. Once you get to acquire knowledge and you're more comfortable with things, then I would start to up my budget a little bit, and I would start to branch out a little bit. But I wouldn't suggest that somebody go out and start buying, a bunch of 1940 play ball cards of a variety of players if they're not fairly well versed in 1940 play ball cards. I would also make sure you're starting to get comfortable with what grading companies you trust, what grading companies are all about, what their guarantees are, what their background is, how long they've been around. Because if you just get into the hobby and you go, oh, I found this new card and it's an ABC Gradings holder and it says it's a ABC 9. Well, it's possible that ABC is not a reputable company and only lasted for 3 weeks. And now you just shelled out a bunch of money for a card that's in an ABC holder, and we don't know much about that. So if you're gonna buy graded cards, get familiar and comfortable with the grading companies. I would say get familiar and comfortable with the players that you're buying, the era that you're buying, before you start spending a significant amount of money. I would say that those would be my main key pieces of advice. And we live in a time and an era which is amazing because the access to information is just off the charts. So I would watch YouTube, which quite frankly though, a lot of YouTube is opinions, myself included. All I'm sharing right now are opinions. Doesn't make anybody necessarily an expert. So I would get different people's opinions. I would do reading about different players, different companies, different sets, different eras, different trends, and I would observe for a while first. It's sort of like, if you get hired at a new company and you're the new manager at the new company, all right? You don't want to show up at the first day and start telling them how to change everything up. You don't want to sit there and go, hey, you're not working there anymore. You're going to go, you're doing this wrong. You're doing that wrong. We're going to do it this way now because I'm in charge. You don't come in and then just start doing stuff. And some people would say, well, Greg, that's your channel. That's probably what some people would say. Greg, you're acting, I'm just here talking about cards, having fun. My take is you observe for a while. Before I put out a single YouTube video, I watched YouTube videos for a couple of years. It's a completely new sphere that I entered a year and a half ago. And so just like the manager who comes in, who should just observe for a while, get their feet under them, kind of figure out how things work and figure out what's what. Just like my YouTube channel, I didn't just show up day one, and there are channels that have done that. And people trusted those people and trusted their advice. And what I believe is when you show up somewhere, you don't suddenly become the life of the party, right? You have to kind of get comfortable, get your feet under you, observe for a little bit, and then start getting involved. I'd say it's the same thing with collecting cards. Go to some shows, walk around, talk to some dealers and some experts and other collectors, get some opinions, watch some YouTube, read some articles, and then decide what direction you want to go and come up with a plan, a specific plan. Don't just aimlessly start buying things that don't go together. Come up with a narrow focused plan and then slowly expand from there. That would probably be my advice.
Thanks for your take on the collector's acquisition of SGC in your recent videos. Curious to get your take on something. I'm currently working on a Hank Aaron Topps base card run with SGC, mid-grade. My plan is to simply have them in my collection with no immediate plans to sell any. I have bought some of these cards already in SGC, but have also bought some cards raw and had SGC grade them. In your opinion, would you continue to buy or grade with SGC? There are a lot of mixed opinions out there on what becomes of SGC in the short, medium, long term. Like I said, this isn't about resale value at this point, but if there's a chance SGC isn't a company in a year or two, I'd probably just opt to cross over my existing slabs and start grading buying my Hanks with PSA.
All right, so real quickly, one other question has a lot of crossover. I saved these questions about the whole grading merger stuff until the very end because I know a lot of people are burnt out on it. But I also know there's a lot of people that find it interesting, fascinating, and want to kind of figure out what's going on. So I think it's important to talk about, but I put these two questions at the end on purpose so that the people who aren't interested in hearing more about the grading thing can check out. But here's the second question that has a lot of overlap with that one.
With SGC being bought by the parent company of PSA, could you see there being more collectors considering or reconsidering buying raw vintage cards? Maybe only the big money cards are the ones worth sending in for grading?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts on this. These are some great questions. I quite frankly don't know how I'm going to be able to answer the series of questions in those two comment questions and be able to do it coherently. So I might be a little bit scatterbrained on this, but I want to give you my take and I want to kind of talk about what do we do or what should we do or what could we do. I think it kind of goes back to what I just was talking about a few minutes ago, which is sometimes we just need to observe before we know what we should do. You know, showing up and immediately having a massive change, and this is a big deal. This is a very big deal. And just saying, oh, it's no big deal. I don't think that's the right move. I think the people who are saying, not all of them, a lot of the people that are saying, I don't think this is going to be that big a deal. I think a lot of those people are people who have a lot of SGC cards. We don't want to think it's going to be a big deal. We don't want it to be a big deal. So we're just going to kind of go, let's just shrug it off, keep on moving. I'm not saying we should do anything differently with SGC right now, but I don't think that we should just shrug it off of, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I think it could be a big deal as we move forward. The merger is a big deal because it's going to dramatically shift the competition of this portion of the industry. And whether we like it or not, graded cards are part of the card industry. There is no way around that. They are fully intertwined at this point. If you don't think that they're intertwined or you don't want them to be intertwined, they're intertwined. Now, some people would say, well, they're not intertwined for me because I only buy, ungraded cards. I only buy raw cards. I still think that the value of raw cards are affected by grading. I think that if grading ends up collapsing or having issues or having, the values are intertwined. It is a vine that has found its way into a chain link fence and is so wrapped up there, it's not going to go away. And it's going to affect all of us in the hobby. So would I stop buying SGC? No, I don't think I would stop buying SGC. Am I going to be a little bit more leery? Well, I'm going to be, personally, this is just Greg speaking, I'm a little bit more leery right now. Since the acquisition took place, I have not purchased a card in an SGC holder. I have just before, but I haven't since. Does that mean I won't? No, it doesn't mean I won't. I will. I will buy cards in SGC holders. Will I send cards into SGC still? Yeah, I'll still send cards into SGC. But I'm not going to act like this isn't a big deal, because it is. because the two biggest sports card grading companies are now one sports card grading company. And people keep saying, no. Collectors is the umbrella company. SGC and PSA are separate entities underneath. And they're gonna work independently. I don't see that coexisting. And I've heard a ton of people say, there are all sorts of companies that own different companies that are competitors and they coexist. And I heard just this morning, somebody say, Nike owns Converse, which honestly, that was a news flash to me. I didn't know Nike owned Converse, but apparently Nike owns Converse. Nike and Converse are not really competitors. Do they make the same product? Yes. If you want to get cleats for your soccer or football team or your baseball team, you're not going to buy Converse cleats, right? If you want to buy running shoes, you're not going to buy Converse running shoes. Converse are kind of lounge shoes, right? Now, Nike makes lounge shoes. And there is some overlap there. But I feel like those two lounge shoes, the small portion of Nike shoe manufacturing that are lounge shoes that overlap with Converse, is just a very, very small part of the Nike company. I don't see there being a lot of cannibalization of their own company there. People said, well, beer, Anheuser-Busch owns, I think I heard somebody say, Anheuser-Busch owns Stella. Anheuser-Busch has a lot of different beer brands, no doubt about it. And most of them are kind of marketed at a different group. They're trying to actually get different types of people with the different labels. They're not going after the same group. And people would say, well, Greg, SGC is not going after the same group as PSA. Maybe, but it seems to me like a lot of vintage collectors are all PSA. And a lot of vintage collectors are all SGC. Now, Pokemon and TCG stuff isn't really going with SGC, so that part's not really a crossover. And modern, some people use modern for SGC, so that's not really as big a crossover because most modern is, frankly, PSA. But there is the vintage. So then some people have said, well, Greg, maybe it'll be like when Beckett had like the BGS, with the subgrade labels and the gold up top and all that kind of stuff. And then they had BVG. This PSA is going to take their vintage grading and dish it out to SGC. I definitely don't see that happening. I mean, how's BVG doing right now? How's BCCG doing right now? When the worst thing that happened to Beckett, long term, was once they splintered their own company. They had the value different grading scale of BCCG, and they did that, and then they did BVG, and then they did the BGS, and it's like that didn't work. We've seen a company who was an industry leader at the time try that, and let's see if they're the industry leader now. I don't think that they are. So I don't think that suddenly SGC is going to become the vintage grader for all PSA stuff. Because not to mention, what about all the people who collect vintage who have all PSA stuff? And now suddenly it's all going to be in SGC slabs that doesn't match? That's not going to happen. That is not going to happen, in my opinion. Watch, they'll come out next week and say, guess what we're doing? I don't think that's going to happen. I can't imagine that that's what's going to happen. So is everybody going to go raw? Are raw cards going to suddenly become more valuable because people are going to just stay away from grading altogether? Maybe for a little bit. I mean, this is definitely I had so many comments over the last week since the news broke from raw card collectors going, see, this is why I collect raw. This has been their day in the sun. Yeah, I get they don't have to worry about any speculation. It doesn't affect them. I don't blame them. Do I think raw cards are suddenly going to explode in value? No. Well, why not? Because if raw cards suddenly exploded in value, you know what everyone would do? They would crack their cards out of PSA and SGC slabs and make them raw. You can go backwards. You can take a card that's encapsulated and make it ungraded. So ungraded cards are not going to explode in value, because if they exploded in value, people would flood the market with them by getting a bunch of pliers out and just cracking a bunch of slabs, and then there would be a whole bunch of ungraded cards all of a sudden. So that's not going to happen. It is nice for the purists, for the raw card collectors, to not have to think about if this is going to affect them. And that's great. And quite frankly, in its purest form, I do think collecting raw is the purest way of collecting. But it's just hard to buy online. It's hard to buy from a picture when a card is not graded. Because again, I said this many, many times, it's a three-dimensional object that we're judging from a two-dimensional picture. And if it's a two-dimensional picture, we can't see the three-dimensional part of the card, which is a major part of the condition. So I haven't really gotten anywhere, have I? People are probably listening going, yeah, so what's your point? What do you think? I don't know. I don't know. None of us know what's going to happen. We can only speculate. We can only guess. I've heard a lot of people say that PSA is going to kill off SGC. Is that possible? Sure, it's possible. Would they say they're going to do that? No, they're not going to say they're going to do that. I think we have some time to figure this out. I don't expect anything significant to change for like a year. Because what they have is right now, everybody's nervous. PSA people are nervous. SGC people are nervous. Everybody's nervous. And the worst thing they could do is come out with major news about, crossing over and combining and changing this and that. That's the worst thing they can do. If they're smart, what I think they would do is go like a year of just wait and see. Wait and see. Read the market, talk to people, talk to collectors, go to the national, get feedback from people, send out surveys, see what people want, and then make a decision. So I think we have some time, whether you're an SGC person, whether you're nervous about it. I think there's going to be some time before we see anything change. And obviously none of us know what's going to change, but I said this once before, and I'll say it again here, is when a company has two brands that do the same thing, the times that works is when you're differentiating them from a premium and an economy, right? There's an economy brand and there's a premium brand. And if they have two competing brands, and people say, well, Greg, everyone has always thought that SGC was like the less valued version. I don't think so. That's the reason that SGC was making inroads, is because they were a premium brand that returned their stuff quickly. And in addition to returning their stuff quickly, they were way more affordable. And they were a premium brand. So I don't think they're going to suddenly go, oh, PSA is going to suddenly go, oh, well, that's our economy brand and PSA is the premium brand. Because PSA is not going to be the economy brand. I can tell you that. PSA will be their premium brand. So if they continue to have a cheaper, less expensive option, that will by nature make it the economy option. And if you take PSA and SGC and both of which I think are premium brands, and you make one more expensive than the other, you're making the other one an economy brand. And if you're making that one an economy brand, then you're harming that brand. If it was a premium and now it's economy, you are devaluing the brand. So I don't see how they're going to be able to have two companies that do the same thing, that basically are competing for the same collector, and not have very, very similar prices. If they took SGC and made it $20 and they took PSA and made it $20, and it was just, do you want the SGC holder and brand and look, or do you want the PSA holder and brand and look? Then they might be able to have them coexist. But my concern is, if you have the two brands coexisting under the same parent company, and you want them to both be premium brands, but one is significantly cheaper than the other, that's not what a premium brand is. You don't have a premium brand be significantly cheaper than the other. You know, people have also used the comparison of hotel chains. When you stay at certain hotel chains, you know you're staying in a really nice, clean hotel. And you're staying at other hotel chains, and you know that you're just basically getting a roof over your head and a bed in for the night. And they're owned by the same companies. They're not competing for the same customers. They're competing for the person who needs cheap, quick, get in, get out, go, and the person who wants comfort and luxury. They're not competing for the same. SGC and PSA, in my eyes, are pretty much competing for the same people. And if they're competing for the same people, and they're not the same price, I think that one of the brands would be harmed. Where do we go from here? I don't know. Am I right? I don't know. I haven't even had a week to think on this. But that's my reaction to this. So what would I do? To answer the question, what would I do? Would I start collecting raw? Not necessarily. Would I stop sending to SGC? No, not necessarily. Would I stop buying SGC slabs? No, not necessarily. I would just kind of cautiously move forward and pay close attention to what's going on. And if something starts to change that you're uncomfortable with, then make a switch. But I think it's far too early to be able to tell if something dramatic is going to happen. But I don't think personally that SGC cards in slabs, SGC slabbed cards are going to suddenly plummet. I do not think that's going to happen. And I do not think that PSA slabs are going to suddenly be a bigger premium over SGC slabs. I do not think that's going to happen. I think only time will tell. And right now, we just keep doing what we're doing, but kind of keep our ears open. Pay attention to make sure that, we know what's happening. That's my take, at least. Hey, if you've got a question for next week's episode, all you have to do is down below in the comments, simply ask your question in the comments below. Have a look out for Friday. Friday, I'm going to show you my pickups from February. I got some cool stuff. Pretty excited to share it. And I'll give you all the information to how to submit your cards for the February show and tell from the Midlife Community Card Pickups for the month of February. Look up that on Friday.